challenging.
Dan akhirnya dibuang seperti ini dengan mubazir sangat disayangkan sekali. Ini adalah solusinya.
We can turn Singapore into a protein powerhouse overnight, but people don't understand what we're doing.
Women farmers are the solution for the food security problem.
Race to Feed the World, Monday on CNA.
Macet, an Indonesian word that describes Jakarta's notorious traffic congestion. The introduction of the MRT is a definite game changer, and hopefully Macet will be a thing of the past for Southeast Asia's biggest capital.
Safari Smile, CNA, Jakarta.
This June, Asia's past, present and future comes together. Race to feed the world as scientists, farmers and entrepreneurs solve the impending food crisis. Journalist Yuma Raki unveils the transformation of Japan's social and political identity in Deciphering Japan, and relive the history of the Chinese Communist Party as it marks 100 years of existence. This June on CNA.
Let's update this hour's top stories. Malaysian health officials say more young people are testing positive for COVID-19 as the country registers a record number of new infections for a third straight day. Australia's second most populous state, Victoria, to go into a snap lockdown, its fourth since the pandemic began. And Hong Kong approves a major overhaul of its political system, cutting down the number of directly elected seats. India's Odisha state will screen 650,000 people for COVID-19 symptoms after they were evacuated from the path of cyclone Yas. A local official says COVID-19 precautions were observed during the evacuation process and masks were distributed. Odisha and West Bengal are among some of the worst hit states by the powerful storm which made landfall yesterday. At least 9 people, including 4 children, are dead. Tens of thousands of homes have been destroyed and more than 2 million people were evacuated in the 2 states. Authorities have warned it will be a huge challenge to maintain social distancing at shelters against the backdrop of the pandemic.
छपर उपरे भी गछ बड़ बड़ गछ पड़ी जाइए एपर्यंत फायर स्टेशन वाला आसी ना मु बर्तमान 2-3टा छुआ को नहीं कईटिकी जीवी बड़ हैरान होती
बुकिंग करी माँ मो जेजेमा माने वैक्सीन नापाइका बट माने आज डेट देले किंतु आज एबे आसिक आम फेरिकी जाऊँ कि आज ना एक्सटेंड कर देइछंती बात्या 3 दिन.
Neha Punya in New Delhi tells us how relief efforts are faring in the wake of the cyclone.
Well, for the last few days, the focus really was on evacuating as many people as possible, and it was a race against time. There were more than 1.5 million people evacuated along India's east coast, many of them in the states of West Bengal and Odisha. But in the aftermath of this cyclone, as it moves northwestwards towards the state of Jharkhand and eventually towards North India, where it's likely to weaken over the next 12 hours, the focus is now shifted to relief operations and rescue operations. We're now seeing thousands of army personnel as well as the National Disaster Response personnel teams on the ground who are rescuing stranded citizens. Many villages, about 1,000 in the state of West Bengal, have been inundated. Many of them have been cut off. And the government there saying about 50,000 people have been rendered homeless in the aftermath of this cyclone. Similarly in Odisha as well, many coastal regions saw extreme inundation, widespread flooding because of tidal waves that were as high as 14 feet. So the focus, officials say, is on rescuing citizens who are stranded in these regions, getting food and aid to them, ensuring medical aid reaches those people who've suffered any kind of injuries in the aftermath of this cyclone. The government in Odisha also promising free food grains to villagers who've been impacted by this cyclone for the next 1 week. Of course, there was extensive preparation, which is why officials say that the loss to life from this cyclone has been minimal, but it will take several days to ensure that normalcy returns to these regions.
The UN Human Rights Council has called for Israel to stop the evictions of residents in Palestinian territories. It says the recent conflict poses serious concerns over human rights violations. Member states are meeting virtually this hour to discuss the draft resolution. It was proposed by a group of Muslim nations led by Pakistan. The draft resolution calls for an unprecedented investigation into alleged human rights abuses in the latest Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The inquiry will also be the first to look at all underlying causes of the decades-long conflict. It includes a mandate to investigate systematic abuses committed within Israel. A vote on the proposal is expected at the end of today's session. Israel has condemned both the meeting and the draft text. It says their purpose is to blame Israel while downplaying crimes by Hamas. China has defended holding the spy trial of an Australian writer and academic behind closed doors as it involved state secrets. Australia's ambassador to China has been barred from Yang Hengjun's trial on charges of spying. It's a case that has worsened a bitter row between the two nations. Australia has voiced concerns about China's handling of the case. Beijing says it rejects what it sees as Canberra's efforts to intervene. If convicted, Yang faces a jail term of 10 years or more. Popular Malaysian singer Siti Nurhaliza and her husband have been fined for violating the country's movement control order. The pair had flouted the rules during a religious ceremony for their second child early this month. Authorities say those who were at the ceremony have also been fined for failing to observe a safe distance during the ceremony, including Dr. Zulkifli Muhammad Al-Bakri, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Religious Affairs. An Indonesian court has fined hardline cleric Rizik Shihab $1,400 for breaking COVID-19 quarantine rules. He was hit with the fine for appearing at an event that drew thousands of followers in November. This was when the country was grappling with the worst outbreak of coronavirus in Southeast Asia and had limited gatherings. Rizik's lawyers have told the court that they will need more time to respond to the verdict. The cleric would face 5 months in jail if the fine is not paid. U.S. President Joe Biden is calling for a ceasefire in Ethiopia's war-ravaged Tigray region. He says large-scale human rights abuses are taking place there and that unimpeded humanitarian access must be granted in order to prevent widespread famine. Jaguti Dave reports from Washington.
US President Joe Biden in a statement said Eritrean and Amhara forces should withdraw from the Tigray region. He said that there were large-scale human rights abuses happening in Tigray, including widespread sexual violence. He called them unacceptable and he said they must end. He also noted that the UN said that Ethiopia could experience its first famine since the 1980s because of this conflict between the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the Ethiopian military that began last November. Now, Joe Biden's comments come after the United States imposed sanctions on those Eritrean and Ethiopian officials that it deemed were undermining any resolution in the conflict in the northern region in Ethiopia. Now, it also put restrictions on economic and security assistance on Ethiopia. Ethiopia responded by accusing the United States of meddling. Now, in his statement, US President Joe Biden also said that the US Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Jeff Feltman, is leading diplomatic efforts in the region, but he won't just be focusing on this conflict in Tigray. He'll be looking at other issues as well. Most notably, he said in the statement, he'll also be looking at the dispute over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is the cause of tensions between Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt. And to make matters even more complicated, there are reports that suggests that Egypt hopes that its recent role in the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel will hold some weight with US President Joe Biden over this dam dispute.
Eugenia is back in a moment with your Asia Business Update. Foreign lenders shoulder SoftBank's soaring rise in borrowing. And later, from black hole theories to script